Lane Kiffin says the report of Ole Miss giving him an ultimatum on his future is absolutely not true. Then why did your family make trips to LSU and Florida? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And of course, our show, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, but also on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, broadcasting daily across Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. All right, the latest in the Lane Kiffin drama, saga, as the world turns in Oxford. Well, Lane Kiffin yesterday making an appearance on the Pat McAfee show, and he was asked about the report that came out from The Athletic just a day prior that Ole Miss gave Lane Kiffin a deadline before the Egg Bowl against Mississippi State on November 28th to make a decision on his future. Lane Kiffin saying, quote, "That's absolutely not true. There's been no ultimatum, anything like that at all. I don't know where that came from." The reported ultimatum came amid rampant speculation about his future, and Ole Miss brass saying, well, if he's going to leave us after the playoff and we're scrambling to find a head coach in January or February, yeah, we'd rather not do that. So Lane, either sign on the dotted line on this extension we've got on your desk, or go ahead and take off. We'll keep the current coaching staff intact and we'll move forward with them. But we don't want you coaching our team into the playoff if you're going to go to a crosstown rival. And I say that because both LSU and Florida are on Ole Miss's schedule next year. It's not exactly like they could avoid him. You know, if he was taking the USC job, okay, out of sight, out of mind. But staying in the SEC potentially? And then, of course, there's the story that Kiffin's family members reportedly took trips to Gainesville and Baton Rouge on Sunday and Monday, and those are verified by legit reporters out there. Those aren't just internet rumors. They had, flight trackers, and news reporters in Baton Rouge saw Layla Kiffin and others getting on the plane. So, look, it's going to be very interesting what happens here. Obviously, Ole Miss, they want clarity, and the tension in the building in Oxford is reaching a high point. And what's crazy about the interview with McAfee was he tried to act like it was no big deal. He brings out Kewan Lacy, the running back, and kind of, oh yeah, look, we're everything's fine here. In fact, his quote was, "We're having a blast here. I love it here." And to me, it almost came across as like he's trying to give this image of, oh, it's business as usual here. Well, yeah, but does he think in his mind that he'll be able to, just keep coaching the team, coach him in the playoff, and then make the announcement? That's what Ole Miss is trying to avoid. But I think they're going to tell him, we're not going into the playoff with you unless you sign an extension. But can they force his hand? That's the question. I mean, I've heard people saying, well, if he doesn't do it, they'll tell him, take a hike. You'll be on the payroll, but you just won't be here. We'll let the other coaches coach. And I'm like, how do you force that? So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. Again, Kiffin saying there's been no ultimatum, nothing like that. We're having a blast. I love it here. CBS Sports, of course, they even reported about the Kiffin family taking a private plane for a campus visit to a rival school he's considering taking a job with. Again, CBS Sports reporting that if Ole Miss was convinced Kiffin was not staying long-term in Oxford, they will not let him coach in the playoffs. So this isn't just a erroneous report or whatever. This is actual factual stuff. And, you think about last week where Keith Carter, athletic director, said the courtship of Lane Kiffin has been internally handled really well. Well, now it's not internal anymore. It's about to get, hey, this is going to be real public. Crazy thing is, you think about Kiffin, the success he had there started in 20, the COVID year, and then got going in 2021. They beat Mississippi State, or if they beat Mississippi State next week, that's going to be 50 wins in 5 years for the program. Only 2 other SEC teams have done that. So I mean, look, he has been phenomenal there in Oxford. And I get the Ole Miss fans who are saying, bro, put up or shut up. Either you're with us or you're against us. But you got to make a decision here real soon. We cannot go through the rest of the season. It seems wild. Lane Kiffin's about to make his first playoff as a head coach. And is he willing to sacrifice that to go take the Florida or the LSU job? Paul Feinbaum yesterday on ESPN weighing in on the topic. Paul Feinbaum saying, I understand if you're Layla Kiffin, you want to check out where your son might be playing quarterback there, but there are ways of doing it without this circus that's going on right now. I do think Lane Kiffin is doing Ole Miss a disservice. Anytime you're indecisive, and I promise you we've all been there, you make it difficult for the people who are waiting and needing to know the answer. There are ways of doing it, and sometimes it is out in the public domain. And in Kiffin's case, I don't see how he helped himself today going on Pat McAfee. And again, that was the weird thing. I mean, I get McAfee wanted to have him on, and he got the ratings. He got the bump. All the people tuning in. It was like, tens of thousands of people tuning in on the YouTube page. But they didn't ask him about the family visiting Gainesville or LSU. And that's where it's kind of like, how do you avoid answering or asking that question? Maybe they were told, don't ask that. Paul Feinbaum, of course, said a couple days ago, he said, let's talk for a second about what specifically Lane Kiffin said. And did he clear up the situation at all on Saturday? He goes on, or on Tuesday, rather, goes on one of the most watched shows on TV to do what? Not to talk about his next game of the season, but to talk about himself. Or in that statement today, did Lane Kiffin deny anything that is going on? All he really said was the ultimatum by Ole Miss is not true. Does it make any difference? So what Lane Kiffin did was he chose the lowest hanging fruit story about Ole Miss issuing an ultimatum. He didn't clear anything up. And that's where I've had several people say to me, like, if he legit was not going anywhere, he would say it. And I get people lie. Nobody more famous than Nick Saban saying, I don't know how many more times I got to say it. I'm not going to be the Alabama head coach. But just a week or so ago, Dan Lanning was on with one of the national shows, and he was asked about speculation of other jobs. He said, I'm not leaving Oregon. And he just said it as definitive as that. And again, it's a coach's word. I get it. It's not worth the paper it's written on or whatever. But when he said it so definitively and confidently, you went, oh, yeah, Dan Lanning's not leaving. He's happy at Oregon. He's got everything he needs at Oregon, all the money in the world, Nike money, everything else. He's not leaving. And it would be very easy for Lane Kiffin to just get in front of a podium or in front of a microphone tomorrow and go, I am not leaving Oxford. Look, we're working out the details. I'm going to sign a long-term contract to stay here. They're going to take care of me, making me one of the highest paid coaches in the country. But I'm happy here. There's no place in the world I'd rather be. And he hasn't done that. So until he does, speculation will run rampant, and he very likely could still leave for the LSU or Florida job. But the vibe I got, at least from the interview, this is just me personally, I thought, okay, maybe it's more 50-50 he's going to stay. If you would ask me on Monday or Tuesday before this interview, I would have said, yeah, I think it's 80% he's gone. After that interview, I think it's very much more 50-50. And from other people I've talked to, they think it is very much up in the air. That Lane is torn here. So we'll see. We're going to talk with Michael Katz, who covers the Ole Miss beat on a daily basis, coming up in the next segment. But a few other things I did want to touch on here before we move on, and this is all coaching search related. Over at Arkansas, Bobby Petrino still rolling on as the interim coach there. But the Razorbacks reportedly interviewing a former Big Ten coach. According to CBS Sports, Chris Hummer, John Talty, and Matt Zenitz, Arkansas recently interviewed former Northwestern head coach Pat Fitzgerald for their open position. And that's a name that keeps popping up. Most successful coach in Northwestern history. Several schools have reportedly interviewed Fitzgerald. He turns 51 in 2 weeks, coached Northwestern for 17 seasons, won 106-81, 3 10-win seasons in there. And his final season plagued by a hazing scandal that led to his firing. He sued Northwestern for wrongful termination and settled his case in August. The university later released a statement saying Fitzgerald was not aware of the hazing allegations. So basically, what he got fired for is his slate is cleaned. So he told College Game Day earlier this month he feels fully vindicated from the end of his Northwestern tenure, and he's ready to get back into coaching. So we'll see. But Pat Fitzgerald on the list there for Arkansas and interviewing for that job. How about another coaching search name? Eli Drinkwitz. Of course, been outstanding there at Mizzou. He was asked, speaking with the media on Tuesday, about his name popping up and any speculation that he's heading elsewhere. Drinkwitz said, quote, "I'm not going to comment on message board chatter, tweets, sources. I've maintained with you and our team that my complete focus is on the task at hand. All this stuff is just as distraction. I would like to remind everybody, including our fans, we absolutely love Mizzou. We love what we're building. Our administration has been nothing short of phenomenal to me. The alignment we have is tremendous. Since I've been here, I've signed multiple extensions. In fact, I signed one this past summer. All the speculation is really a tribute, and it's a tribute to our team's success. And I'm not going to get into all that stuff because, again, it's just a distraction." What did Drink not say there? I'm not leaving. Again, the coaches, unless they say I'm not leaving, the door is open. The door is cracked. All right. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen up every day. Coming up next, we will talk with Michael Katz, get the latest from Oxford on what is going on with the Lane Kiffin situation. That's coming your way next. Hey, first, I want to remind you about our friends over at FanDuel. And look, if you've been looking to get into the betting game, no better place to do it than with FanDuel. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. The best part is we got games every night. I mean, NBA, you got games. College basketball, you got games. They got pro football. They got college football, including plenty of those SEC games. We only got 2 weeks left in the regular season. So what are you waiting for? Go jump in there. You combine your live bets into a same game parlay, get a shot at an even bigger payout. And look, frankly, it keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is in it and you got to bet on them. Right now, FanDuel, they're giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, get signed up, play your game with FanDuel, and of course, they are the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Run along here, Locked On SEC, and we're continuing to talk more about the latest with the Lane Kiffin situation. Obviously, we talked about the Pat McAfee appearance yesterday, and join us now to give us a little bit more of an insider perspective. He is Michael Katz, covering Ole Miss for the Daily Journal there in Mississippi. And Michael, I'm sure never a dull moment. The last 72 hours have probably been wild for you. Welcome in, man. What's this been like?
You know, I would say 72 hours, but I'd also just say the last 4 years since I've been here. It's just I feel like I'm doing this a lot. But you know, like we talked about, it's great for business, and so I appreciate that. There's a lot going on right now in Oxford, and I think a lot of people are kind of on edge about what is going to happen. And I think a lot of people I don't think any of us know exactly what's going to happen with the developments.
Let's talk a little bit about just how we got to this point in the season. I mean, last season was hands down his most talented team he supposedly ever had. And the NFL draft backed that up, right? From Walter Nolan to, I mean, all the different pieces that got drafted. And yet the 3 losses, they miss out on the playoff, and it felt like a major disappointment. And I think almost everybody I talked to at SEC Media Days said it's going to be a step back. It's a new roster. He's going to have to work in a new quarterback and Austin Simmons and all this stuff. And, a lot of the polls didn't even have him ranked preseason. And I think expectations were kind of, all right, well, we'll see. And, man, have they exceeded those expectations. Trinidad Chambliss coming out of nowhere and basically Wally Pipping Austin Simmons. But what have you made of the season, and why this team has had more success on paper than last year's team?
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I think I had them like 20, 21 or something in my preseason AP ballot. I think there's no question that that was a top 5 roster in college football. I mean, that was an elite team that found ways to lose. 3 games by 13 points. I mean, that's everything that could have gone wrong at the end of games went wrong for them in those 3 matchups. They did not win a single 1-score game last year, which is kind of remarkable. They won everything by at least 10. A lot of them, I think the average was like 25 or 30. I mean, they boat raced people until they didn't. This is obviously a very different team. It's, I think, only 4 returning starters. Lane Kiffin acknowledged that this was going to be a team that was going to have to be gritty, probably a smaller margin for error, but you got to give it to them. They've just figured out ways to win. I think part of that is They've gone back to emphasizing the running game. That was a really big reason for some of those losses last year, not being able to close out games again against LSU and Florida. If they convert a couple more first down situations or don't get stopped, I think those games go quite differently. So they reestablished the run this year. Kewan Lacy has been honestly probably one of the best pickups in the portal this year. He's, I think, third in the nation in rushing. He's got 19 touchdowns, and so I think that has been really good. I think the schedule has lined up pretty well for them. I think at first you had some teams on there like LSU and South Carolina and Florida that were supposed to be top 15-ish teams that could have been problems, and then obviously things didn't go great for those teams. I think going into it, the defining moment was going to be that road trip at Georgia and Oklahoma the next week. If you could split that, you feel pretty good. And let's be honest, they should have swept it. They should have beaten Georgia. They were up 9, I believe, after 3 quarters. And again, they found a way to lose. That's the only game they found a way to lose this year. So I think that was always sort of going to be a defining thing. But I thought best case scenario, absolute best case, this was a 10-2 team. I thought 9-3 or 8-4 seemed more realistic because I think they're well coached and they're talented. They were just young. And you don't just replace guys like Walter Nolan and Jackson Dart and Princely Emmanuelen and all these superstars that they had. But credit to the coaching staff for finding maybe more under the radar guys. Again, Trinidad Chambliss, the D2 national champion at Ferris State last year. I mean, who would have thought? Kewan Lacy wasn't a huge transfer priority, I think, for a lot of teams. They've nailed it in terms of they've hit all of their personnel additions for the most part this year. Between that, the schedule lining up, and them just, I think, being committed more to the run, it's really been this. I'm going to be honest. If you had told me they'd be 10-1 heading into the Egg Bowl week, I would have said you're a liar. This didn't seem like it was possible, and it's really a credit to Kiffin and the staff, and I think that's what makes this whole situation that we're in so fascinating, and maybe kind of sucks for the players because they've had this great year and nobody's talking about it. Everybody's talking about, is he even going to be there to coach them in the Egg Bowl?
Well, you fast forward to now, yes, they're 10-1, and look, as they're winning along the way, we start seeing coaches are dropping like flies. The Arkansas job opens, the Florida job opens, the LSU job opens, Auburn opens, obviously Penn State was open, and so some really big, high-profile jobs, where the average fan would say those are bigger programs than Ole Miss, and it was kind of in recent weeks there was okay, maybe Lane Kiffin he might eye these jobs. And obviously the Vegas odds start coming out and his name's popping up and all this. But I think really it was in the last week, Michael, that this thing really started to become, okay, he really might leave. Because they, it felt like you guys in the media, you're kind of like hinting at it and asking him like, are you going to be here? All these other coaches are signing Kurt Signetti, Rhett Lashley. All these coaches are getting locked up signing extensions. And there's Lane Kiffin kind of sitting there not doing it. And so here we are. The report comes out that the Ole Miss brass basically gave him an ultimatum and said, hey, we need an answer by the Egg Bowl next week. I know he retorted that said that's not true on the Pat McAfee show, but it would make sense, right? According to your sources, is this a real possibility that they're saying, hey, we need an answer here?
The way I look at it is if you're Ole Miss and you even think that there's a chance that he is not going to be your coach next year and you let him keep coaching through the Egg Bowl and the playoff, say you win a couple playoff games and he still hasn't told you what he's going to do, and Florida and LSU are still looking for coaches. Maybe one of them fills out by then because they don't want to wait it out. But say someone waits it out and he does decide to leave. You are in the middle of January and all the good coaches are gone now. There's only so many great candidates, and obviously Lane is kind of the belle of the ball right now nationally in terms of everybody wants him to be their coach for the most part, but the John Summeralls, the Chesneys from James Madison, there's good coaches, but there's only so many of them. And if you wait this out too long, you're going to lose him. I feel like we're probably getting pretty close to one of these SEC jobs, whether it's Auburn or Arkansas or something, filling soon. This feels like around the time when we're going to start getting some motion on those coaching dominoes. And when one starts to fall, then they all start to fall. And if you're left too far behind, it's hard to recover from. So I think just from a common sense standpoint, I don't think you can let this go on. And then there's, of course, the whole optics of it. If he's going, or if he announces that he's going and you let him coach, I mean, that looks horrible for Ole Miss, that you're letting the guy who is betraying you for another SEC school finish out the season. I think that's terrible optics for everyone involved. So there's a lot of little nuances to this that I feel like, again, this is gut feeling, but I know that Lane fought against the notion of the ultimatum, but something before the Egg Bowl makes a lot of sense, because I don't think they can afford to wait any longer than that.
Yeah, and it feels like somewhere either there or right after the game, there will be an announcement of Lane is signed a long-term contract, or at least they plan to. They don't have to sign it. They plan to sign a long-term agreement. He's staying in Oxford. I mean, all that could happen. I'm not TMZ Sports, Michael, but kind of help me out here, because I've heard so many things from Layla, the estranged wife, the ex-wife. They've reconciled all this. Just fill us in on the details. Are they kind of back together? Because I think that's an important detail to the family moving to another city.
Yeah, and it is, and I've had to sort of parse through that too over the last few months, what exactly it is. And again, I'm not his personal life isn't necessarily my business.
Right.
That being said, from what I have heard, I don't believe they are together. I don't think that's the case, but I think they are in a good place, obviously. And she brought Knox over here from California. And so, but it is, there's a big difference between ex-wife and getting back together and all these sorts of things. And again, I don't know all of the nuances with that, but it's at least last time I looked into it, I don't believe that they were back together, but clearly they have a good relationship, and they want what's best for their kids.
I bring that up because if he's sending her on recon missions to go to Gainesville and Baton Rouge, clearly is this a ruse? Is this just I don't know, slap in the face back to Ole Miss for saying this is for you putting pressure on me? Like, it's just very strange, because we've never seen this before. Like, message boards, Michael, we hear, oh, so-and-so was in town today. They were looking at schools and all this. And it's like, but this, according to all the people out there, this really happened. They sent family members to Gainesville and family members to Baton Rouge.
Yeah, and again, like, there's a part of me that thinks like this is the greatest troll job in the history of troll jobs, because this is Lane Kiffin and this is what he does. I mean, he's tweeting Ole Miss stuff today and how great things are. And then in the background of everything, you've got the reporting about the trips to Baton Rouge and Gainesville. I do think, in credit to Paul Feinbaum, he brought this up on his show today, but the idea that if this is more of a family decision and you truly don't know what you're doing, you need to make sure your family is comfortable with wherever it is that you're going. So I can understand the trips. I think that going on a university plane is a tough look. That lands in Oxford, it's hard to beat the allegations on that one. But listen, he's said that a big reason he didn't go to Auburn a few years ago was because of Landry, and she had just started her freshman year at Ole Miss, and she famously made a PowerPoint presentation about all the reasons that he needs to stay and all this stuff. And so he chose family for that one. And I think now with Knox, who's the starting quarterback at Oxford in the midst of a playoff run, you got to look, there are rumors of them looking at schools for Knox and seeing if it's the right fit. So I think it doesn't make it any easier for Ole Miss fans to take. That's obviously going to be really frustrating. But when you think about it from let's give him the benefit of the doubt that this really is about family, I can sort of see it. I just think the way it's playing out publicly is just really hard to stomach for people.
Last thing for you is, I mean, what he's built at Ole Miss, clearly, if they're going to make the playoff this year, because I would have said in years past, Michael, well, you know what? He just can't win big at Ole Miss. Like, that would have been the argument. He can't win a championship at Ole Miss. LSU's won them. Florida's won them in the past 20 years. But if he makes the playoff this year, and look, they don't have to win it all, but go on a run, win a couple playoff games, I think that clearly states he can compete for a championship at Ole Miss. And so is it a clear, I mean, this isn't 2002, like, is Florida or LSU a clear upgrade? Obviously resources they are and bigger fan bases, but like, is that a hands down upgrade for him?
I think there's a few things. Obviously, listen, is are LSU and Florida always going to have more fertile recruiting grounds? Yes, they're always going to have a bigger reach in that regard. They have a bigger stadium. We understand those sorts of things, but I think that, and this isn't always the case, and we've seen this in some of these athletic departments where not everyone is on the same page with coach and athletic director and funding and all this stuff. And listen, is Ole Miss necessarily going to compete in size of stadium? No, but what they can compete in is they've got a really good NIL situation, and they've got an athletic department that is completely on board with what Lane wants to do. He has total reign over doing it the way that he wants to, and it's worked. So I think, and he's talked about it, obviously there's always going to be the draw of those big brands, especially, Lane's, I think he's 50. Like, he remembers Steve Spurrier, right? Like, he remembered, he knows those good LSU teams. Heck, he worked for Saban. He understands brand and the blue blood idea. But at the same time, this is somebody who has openly made mistakes and has thought the grass was greener when it wasn't, and it's burned them. And so, listen, if your whole goal is to make it to the playoff and make a run, you're doing that right now. You are right in the midst of it. And if you make it and win a couple games, I think you have shown that in a quote unquote rebuilding year, with not your best roster, you gave yourself a shot. And, I think with Florida and LSU, obviously tremendous programs with proud histories, but listen, Brian Kelly had great teams, great rosters, and he didn't make the playoff. Florida's never made the playoff in the entire existence of it. So just because you go to a new place that has the quote unquote resources doesn't mean it's always going to work. And right now it's working at Ole Miss. And I don't know. I think sometimes you don't mess with good and what's working. I don't know if that's how he's going to think. I have no idea how he processes things or what his rationale is. But just as someone who knows a little bit about his story and the mistakes and how he's openly said, yeah, I screwed up. This just seems like a situation that you don't want to screw up.
Yeah, it seems like Ryan McGee may need to reopen that documentary and add some add some more pieces to it. All right, I lied. One more for you real quick. Let's just say on the off chance a decision comes in the next couple of days, and they make an announcement that Ole Miss is parting ways because he's going to be the next head coach at LSU or Florida. How does Ole Miss move forward? I mean, obviously you got a tremendous OC in Charlie Weiss Jr., a great DC in Pete Golding. How do they move forward with everything intact?
Yeah, I mean, the message boards have already started creating the plans of what's going to happen if he leaves, and Joe Judge being the head coach. He's the quarterback's coach currently, obviously has NFL head coaching experience. I think the thinking there is, hey, leave the coordinators in place for this playoff run, and then we'll figure it out. I think that if you're looking at external candidates, again, the name John Summerall is one that comes up a lot. He was an assistant here. I think he would absolutely kill it here, just with his personality and he's obviously more of a defense guy, but it's hard not to like him, and he's electric. I think he would do really, really well here. That's the one that comes to mind for me, if it's not somebody currently on the staff.
Yeah, and the wild thing is John Summerall's name is
everywhere
at Auburn, at LSU. I mean, it's like, goodness, this is going to be a wild couple of weeks. Well, Michael, you got nothing to write about over there at the Daily Journal, so we'll be checking out. I got to think, though, next couple of days you're not going to be writing about how did the Ole Miss linebackers slow down the Mississippi run game. I mean, I think,
Yeah, I'm going to leave the X's and O's stuff. It's the funny thing is it's the bye week, and I thought, oh, man, like maybe I'll take a staycation somewhere. Absolutely not. I am on my phone. I woke up at 5 today just to make sure I didn't miss anything. I mean, that's where we're at right now.
He is Michael Katz. Follow him on Twitter at Michael L. Katz. And, of course, read his stuff at the Daily Journal there in Mississippi and covering on a daily basis and hourly basis on what happens with Lane Kiffin. Michael, thanks for the time, man. Really appreciate it.
For sure, man. Appreciate you.
All right, thanks again to Michael Katz. I want to remind you about our friends over at Game Time. College football is back and rolling along here. We only got 2 weeks left, and, of course, then we'll have bowl season and all that. Game Time. They are the place to go to get tickets, especially even last-minute tickets if you're looking to get into the building. And, look, it is the app is super easy to use. It gives the advantage back to the fans. Easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices. No surprise fees what you see is what you pay. Pull up the Game Time app. In just a couple of taps, you're going to see some amazing deals. I'm talking some of your favorite college football games as low as $25, and the app makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from your seat before you buy. That's clutch. Nobody wants a big pole in front of them when they're sitting in those seats, and the app doesn't tell you. Game Time tells you what, or shows you the view from what it looks like. And honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way you're going to buy tickets. So go take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. All right, roll along here. Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Got a couple of other tidbits here around the SEC before we call it a show. Obviously, we spent a lot of time talking Lane Kiffin the last couple of days, but there's plenty of other action to get into and discuss. And we got to talk about Auburn confirming their quarterback plans for the Mercer game as Ashton Daniels is weighing his redshirt decision. DJ Durkin saying this week that Ashton Daniels will not play on Saturday against Mercer. It's cupcake week for a lot of teams in the SEC. And Daniels has already played in 3 games this season. The program wants to ensure he will be able to take a redshirt year this year. Players can only play in a maximum of 4 regular season games and maintain their redshirt. So Durkin telling reporters this week, you have a great responsibility as a head coach to do what is best for your football team and your program at all times. That's what you're hired to do and what you need to do. And you have a responsibility to the young men you coach and their families. I think the best thing for Ashton is to be able to preserve his redshirt year and be able to come back and play another year. So with Daniels not playing against Mercer, it does look like Jackson Arnold and the true freshman Deuce Knight will get an opportunity to play. And obviously we saw a good bit of Jackson Arnold was the big prized offseason transfer, but I think a lot of Auburn fans want to see the true freshman Deuce Knight and what he can do. No offense against Mercer, but it does seem like Ashton Daniels, he will be back for the Iron Bowl next week against Alabama, which a game that became even more pivotal with Alabama losing to Oklahoma last week. They cannot afford another loss. If they do, they'll be probably ousted from the playoff picture, and Auburn would love nothing more in this dismal season where they fired Hugh Freeze than to ruin Alabama's season. All right, other tidbits around the SEC. Over in South Carolina, Shane Beamer speaking to the media Tuesday and showed some confidence that they are going to turn this thing around next season. Shane Beamer telling the media, quote, I do know next year at this time, we are going to be sitting here on this Tuesday night watching the playoff rankings to see where we are in the ranking show. So Shane Beamer thinking that they are going to be back and be a playoff team next year at South Carolina. So obviously the season's not gone like expected. My question is Lenore Sellers coming back? A lot of mock drafts show Lenore Sellers projected to go high in the draft if he comes out. Freakish athlete, tremendous ability, running ability, throwing ability, all that kind of stuff. So that's a big question for South Carolina. Will it be a different quarterback next year? We'll see. But Shane Beamer thinks South Carolina will be a playoff team next year. How about Kewan Lacy, the Ole Miss running back, picked up a National Player of the Week award for his standout performance this past week in the win over Florida. He was named the Maxwell Award Player of the Week for Week 12 with his dominant performance against the Gators. Very impressive stuff from him. And then lastly, did want to mention about Georgia. Greg McElroy, he said on his podcast this week that he thinks Georgia is peaking at the right time with the way their defense is playing, their offense. He said, quote, Gunnar Stockton, outstanding, accounted for 5 touchdowns, one of the most efficient I've seen in quite some time with what he does with his arm and his legs, how he's delivering the football, the windows he hits, the guys he doesn't miss. As far as their defense, they really squeezed things down there in the second half against Texas. Did a good job, especially in the fourth quarter, bottled up the run, squeezed the pocket, made things uncomfortable on Arch Manning. So Georgia, they will play a home game against Charlotte this weekend. And then next weekend, they will head to Mercedes-Benz Stadium to take on Georgia Tech, which right now is a matchup of 2 top 16 teams. So going to be a big, big game there. Remember the, 7-8 overtimes last year? That game was absolutely ridiculous last year. And then lastly, Florida, according to Matt Zenitz at CBS Sports, there's a growing likelihood that defensive lineman Caleb Banks will return this week against the Tennessee Volunteers. So that would be a big player to get back for them. Re-aggravated a preseason foot injury in the loss to LSU earlier this year. So getting Caleb Banks back would be big. Initially listed on the SEC availability report as doubtful before their matchup against Ole Miss last week, but then was upgraded to a game time decision. So we'll see if Caleb Banks plays this week. All right. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. A reminder, you can check us out simulcast daily on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. For any of our listeners who live in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, you can catch us weekdays at 11:30 a.m. Central on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, home of the New Orleans Pelicans and home of Locked On SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.